welcome to another episode of Reminiscences, where we speak to elder statesmen to learn from their experiences both in private and public life. Today is my special pleasure to have as guest Alhaji Abu Maawiya Gidado, who attained national prominence as a Minister of Finance in the government of General Sani Abacha. He is now around 81 years old and retired in Katsina, where I'm talking to him. Sir, you are welcome to this program.
Gentlemen, I thank God the Almighty for bringing into my house to be able to get some of my experiences in life to your usual pioneering job in journalism. I remember the Daily Trust was once initially started as Weekly Trust. You went into this business and you sprang into Daily Trust, and the amount of repute, the amount of understanding, the amount of honor attached to Daily Trust was immeasurable.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate the compliment.
So with you coming into the television aspect of communication to people, I pray, and inshallah we will jump again to a real position of repute nationally and indeed internationally.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Let me start by something you said many years ago, that your father laid a rule for you not to beg. I thought that's a very difficult rule to give a young lad, not to beg anything from anyone.
Except God. Yes, I still remember one instance. My father really nearly slapped me. His junior brother then was a manager in training, former Chief Justice of Nigeria. So
Justice Muhammad Bello.
Justice Muhammad Bello. So he wrote him a letter. And because we are domiciled in Katsina, other students were getting letters from their parents, from their friends all over, but nobody wrote to me. So I said, well, since this uncle of mine is up somewhere, I took his address from the letter I wrote to my father, and I wrote him. And in my letter, I asked him to please send gift of stamps, so that when he writes me, I will write back. I have a stamp already. So I wanted to please my father to say, look, I have written a letter to your brother, and in the letter, I made a mistake to mention this to him.
Yes.
In the letter, I begged him to send stamp so that I can write back to him. He said, well, first, it's good you wrote him, but why should you beg? Why should you beg him? He nearly grabbed me to give me that slap. I escaped. So in those days, our tradition was such that you don't beg anybody. And I'm positive now, all my children, I have seen some children of some chaps, because I am close to their brothers or sisters, I'm close to their parents, they ask me.
They beg you.
They beg me something. But I'm sure the children I have, believe me, nobody would ask anybody for anything. That much I know, because at one time I sent my child to Birnin Kebbi, technical college, technical school. After 1-2 weeks, he rang me. There was no regular communication. He rang me in Kaduna while he was in Birni Kebbi. So we couldn't get the message properly. So I took his mother and myself. We went to Birni Kebbi. The fortune General Daku was then the governor in Sokoto. He gave us transport. We went to Birni Kebbi. So we asked him, what is happening? He said, it's all right, what is happening? But why should I be in another house being fed? They are not my parents. That was the reason why he rang me. I said, no.
In whose house was he?
He was under the supervision of one of the daughters of the emir of Gwandu. She too had her children in the same college. So she was taking care of them. But before he left, the person I asked him to take him to Birni Kebbi, I gave him his transport money, his feeding, his own allowances. I gave that up to make good all such financial commitments so that the child should not feel left begging. And that's why, because I didn't discuss with him that matter. That was the reason why he rang to say, why should he be in another house, being fed without any foreknowledge for him to know why he should be fed by other people, not his father.
So you think that lesson that you got and passed on to your children is very important. Don't beg. Rely on what you can get for yourself.
Yes, I just as you have learned earlier, I admitted this. When we graduated, in fact, when I was in my second year in ABU, 3 of us were picked up by Shell Nigeria Limited. And I was in Kaduna. I was the first person to sell cooking gas in Kaduna as a student.
Cooking gas?
Cooking gas. Along Ali Akilu way, they opened a big shop for me. It was all the big cylinders, small cylinders, hot plates, big cookers, everything. So after 3 months summer holiday, I went back. They had a timetable when I would graduate. They came to my room and offered me a job. But they offered me a salary almost double the salary of my mates in government. So I sat down, I discussed with my uncle. I sat down, I said, what? He said, give it a chance. I said, it's all right. Then I drew up my program in life. One, that the concept in private sector, especially given the expatriate firms of hire and fire, I can be paid very well, but I can also be fired. I resolved that one, all my police will be in government, they will rise up to certain level, but what I envisaged was that I would hate being fired by an expatriate company to go and start begging my colleagues in the government for one help or the other. So for the first 2 years, I had no transport. With the best salary that anybody could get.
So you save your money?
I saved the money, and after 2 years, I saved 1,000 pounds. And the old man was working for some years, and he was earning £5, and he was taking care of his family. And so what I envisaged, if for any reason I fell out with my employers who are expatriate, I should be able to stand on my own, but not to go and start knocking at doors. So that 1,000 pounds, you'll be surprised the way it metamorphosed into many things later in life.
You said somewhere that actually before your first car, you felt that you should have 4 houses before you bought your first car.
What that is, I'll give you the details of. I said I saved 1,000 pounds first 2 years. There was a house offered in Kano for £800. So I went to one manager of Barclays Bank called me, so solid. I said, look, I want you to give me a loan for £800 to buy a house. He said, well, gentlemen, we don't give loans freely. You have to have some.
This is a white man? He's a white man?
White, of course.
Yes.
In those days.
Yes.
You see.
Which year was this?
Must be, we graduated 65 June the following year. 2 years after my graduation.
So about 68.
Exactly. I had £1,000 saved. So I mortgaged that £1,000 and bought a house in Kano, £800. I decided not to tamper with that saving, because if I were to do so, probably it would take me time to make it up as it was. So what I did was to get loan from the bank and deduct all my salaries as they come into my account. And that was after 1.5 years, I paid that money and I had a house in Kano. I was later moved to Jos as a manager. In 1970-71, the war was resolved. There was no civil war. And houses were cheap. So I bought one for £500 again.
In Jos?
In Jos. And that one, after 1 year, I have paid it. So you see, I have 2 houses.
And still no car. You didn't indulge yourself with a car.
Believe me, no car. First 2 years, no car. When I became manager, I had company car. So in Jos, I bought that house, and so I had my £1,000, a house in Kano, a house in Jos. Now, the expatriate thought it better that I should go to Lagos. They promoted me while I was in Jos to retail manager north. All the filling stations of Shell, I was the manager for the whole of them, from Lokoja right down to Birnin Kebbi, all the rest. So I was trotting up and down the north as retail manager north. So this was 1973 or 74. I was asked to come. I was told by my employers that, look, you were in Kaduna, you were in Lagos as manager, you are a manager in Jos. Now, gentlemen, we want you to go to head office and acquire head office experience.
In Lagos?
In Lagos. And so, that was the thing that made me to think hard again. So what I did was, I still had my £1,000. And a classmate of mine was promoted in the civil service as Kantoman Kaduna, Magaji Muhammad.
DO.
He was in charge of Kaduna Metropolis. And he gave me a plot. So with that one, I still maintain that house. I built a house with that money. But with this idea lingering that I should have to have head office experience, Abba Khalid, the governor of Kaduna State, gave me a plot along Sultan Road. I said, if we are to venture to Lagos, how can I develop that plot? Then I decided, since the company was retaining part of my salary and they're adding part of it for my probably fringe benefits when I decided to leave. So I said, okay, probably this is the time to leave. See, I tendered my resignation. They offered me all my entitlements, the deductions, and their additions to my salary. And that enabled me to develop Sultan Road, my fourth house. And what I did was I went to Alhaji Yahya Gusau, isn't it?
Yes.
He was then the chairman of marketing board. I said, sir, I want a job. He said, come, we have a place for you.
So he knows you already.
Yes, you see, so they offered me a job. He was the chairman. Isma was the general manager. Tito Loye was the operations manager. I was the next. While I was there for just 1 year, 1.5 years. Iowa Textile took me away to go there and become their sales manager.
So it is very noticeable. You move from that eventually to Peugeot as deputy managing director.
Yes.
It's noticeable for somebody of your generation, the first generation of educated ABU graduates, that you chose the private sector rather than the public sector. I mean,
Yes.
is this perhaps guided by your vision that, look, it's better to acquire wealth early rather than prominence in the public sector?
You see, my initial ambition was to be a doctor. But then all the provincial secondary schools were not equipped with science facilities to study and become doctors. And since then, I was just floating what to do. Until finally, what really enticed me to go into private sector was the experience I had for that 3 months as the in charge of the gas business for 3 months.
For Shell.
Summer. Yes. The fact that the guy who took over from me was from another cut, let me put it that way. I left before October to pursue my studies. He came in before December. He chopped. He took away some of the money.
Yes.
So they told me, this is what has happened. The chap who replaced you made away with our funds. So that appreciation that I can contribute in the private sector, and then I think that really made me to say, okay, I will go into private sector, especially when I was a student. I read business. I had business bias, not public administration bias, but business bias in administration.
You also, you are very proud of your especially role as deputy managing director of Peugeot, which was a big company set
Yes.
in Kaduna. And I think you said somewhere that being a minister actually is inferior to the role.
Yes.
People will be surprised that you feel like that.
Being a minister is
inferior
to
being the deputy managing director of Peugeot.
Well, you see, deputy managing director of Peugeot, you see, you will find the number of people asking for, especially at that time, a car. It gave me a very wide people to understand what sort of guy I was. And one, I had no company. So all the cars that we dished out privately, people even don't know. When they requested for it, I give it to them. From time to time, I get people asking me, why you are the deputy manager of Peugeot. I asked for a car and you gave it to me. You never saw me. And that was very pleasing to me now. So sometimes the role you play in environment in the society does encourage a person to be free with everybody and do your duties without fear or favor. Because in private sector, if for any reason, after all, the people owning the company, they want to make money. If they have any hint that you can be trickish with their interests, you will not last. They will never trust you to give you any position of repute, position of so vital, so that their interests will not be jeopardized.
How was it working with the French? With a foreign Nigerian? Was it a cordial relationship of work?
It was very cordial, but I had other experiences when I was the general manager of Arewa Textile, the highest position for an African in that during those days. I remember one day there was about to be a strike. I was having malaria, so I wrote something to the managing director who was to meet the labor, that this is what he should do. And he did, and the whole thing was free from possible strike, the whole company. So one day there was, I don't like to say it, but he said, Gidado, great man. He wrote.
Chinese man, right?
Japanese.
The Japanese.
Yes, he wrote to me a note which sort of discharged the whole atmosphere to normal period of work. But similarly in Pujo, I was the deputy managing director, and the managing director was a Frenchman, one engineer Alhaji. His office and my office just a connecting door. So at one time we were dining. It was lunchtime. All the general managers and myself and the managing director, we had a table to eat together and socialize sort of.
Yeah.
So what happened was suddenly there was a discussion on strong points of all the general managers, including deputy manager, director, and the managing director himself. I don't like to say it, but when it came to me, the managing director said he would comment on me, not anybody. He told me, look, in France, people like DMD, Deputy Managing Director, then he quoted one name in French. Such people would always be promoted to the highest position in the organization. They would be exposed to all the intricacies, all the problems of the organization. And invariably, such characters like DMD will always bring the solution. Wallahi, it was his comment.
Yeah.
So I was very surprised because he never bred. Yet such people are not bogged down by routine jobs. No, they would just be promoted at the highest level, be exposed to all the intricacies, all the problems of the organization. And when some problems comes up, they will always give the solution, like my DMD.
How come a private sector man like you, who really made his career in the private sector, how come he ended up as a minister? Under what circumstances were you appointed as minister?
It was very interesting. Now, I was, first of all, I was in public sector, first as Commissioner Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. 6 months later, I was moved to Ministry of Finance.
In Kaduna State?
In Kaduna State. In Kaduna State, what happened was, I was the chairman of Tenders Board, and then I had very nagging and serious asthmatic condition. So one day we had long meeting, air-conditioned office. I was sneezing, coughing, running nose, everything. So I came back home. When I came, I asked my wife to bring food. She brought a plate. I thought it was delicacies like chicken or something. Wallahi. You know what she brought before me? White rice with salt, probably groundnut oil. So when I opened the container, I said, look, this bloody job, why? So I didn't eat it.
You are commissioner there?
I was commissioner of finance, chairman, tenders board, and everything. Wallahi, I didn't eat that food. So I rushed back to Usman Jibrin. I went to him, I said, look, sir, I want to resign.
As commissioner?
As commissioner. He said, look, what are you talking? Please finish the budget and go back to Arewa Textile. So it took me 3 months to finish the Kaduna State budget. And I announced the budget. I went back to Arewa Textile.
Your salary was so poor that your wife really couldn't make you. It's not her fault.
Well, my position, did you say?
I said your salary was so poor, what you brought home as commissioner, she could not really make you
the food I was used to in private sector. Exactly. So I left. But I remember while I was there, no, in fact, Muhtar also came and met me as Commissioner of Finance. So there was a big row at one time when there was change of policy on the part of the government that LBAs should get their money from the banks, not government money for cheap. They don't repay.
What are LBAs?
Local buying agents of cotton and groundnut. So Muhtar went to Funtua and he saw endless of cotton bales. The farmers brought all their bales, but nobody was buying. So he took the chairman of Funtua local government. He's Wani Magarim, Ibrahim.
Okay. It's a father figure.
Exactly, because one of his sons was a commissioner. So he took him to Kaduna. He shouted at me, Honorable Commissioner. I said, yes, sir. Please give $500,000 to Funtua local government chairman to buy cotton. I said, yes, sir. So I took my chairman, my Uber, to Minister of Finance. I opened what civil servant called flimsy file. I opened flimsy file. I minuted to my permanent secretary, Malan Abbas, a really groomed civil servant. I said, PAMSEC, please issue a check of $500,000 to Funtua local government to buy cotton. That's my first instruction. My second instruction was evolve method for repayment. The third one was failure to comply, failure to pay. We deduct from the subvention of the local government. Those were my instructions to my permanent secretary, Mala Abbas Rafinda. Quickly, he issued a check of $500,000 to Funtua local government chairman, and he wrote a sticker to me. He said, Honorable Commissioner, thanks for this. We have issued a check of $500,000 to Funtua local government to buy cotton, but I would like to draw your attention to the fact that this buying of cotton and so forth wasn't our responsibility. That was the organization charged with that responsibility. Our money is not for that. And he, being the account officer of the ministry, he really threw our thing back to us that we were acting ultra virus, not in accord with what we are expected to do. So I was very happy. So for my boss to feel that I had done my job as instructed, I said, Your Excellency, a check of 1 million has been issued to control local government. This is for your information. And the Mutar went and read the stinker that was written by the permanent secretary. Before you say what, there was a page full of red writing. We were saying, Honorable Commissioner, thanks for your effort, but I do not take kindly comments made by your permanent secretary. How could he look at our job? He was condemning him. Finally, he said, look, I will deal with you personally. and the way he reacted, also reacted, I said, Allah. But since it is a matter of writing, I will write him back. That Your Excellency, it wasn't my intention to generate unnecessary bickering or dialogue between you and myself, Your Excellency. But Your Excellency, you know very well, public finances are not for free spending. Public finances are governed by rules and regulations. And an officer, by the way, he was the accounting officer of the ministry. We look at our job, what we have done as this, as this, as this. Without meaning harm. What more, Your Excellency? He was the person in charge of our finances. What more, Your Excellency? He's doing his duty as the accounting officer of our ministry. I said, what is important, Your Excellency, is obedience to our instruction. It was done with such unprecedented speed. What more, Your Excellency? The minutes you read are not minutes to you, but to me. So you should leave it to me to consider as I do fit. 5 minutes later, the file was returned, and said no further action in this matter.
So the money was not disbursed?
No, it was, they took away the money. But this is bickering between an officer who was doing his job,
yes,
like the one I have said,
yes,
and my boss.
yes, the governor.
The governor.
Yeah.
And I was in the middle.
Yes. So let us go to your period as minister.
Yes.
How did it happen? How were you appointed a minister?
This is the question I really cannot. Well, what I would say is this.
Were you then in Peugeot? Were you called from Peugeot to be minister, or
No.
you had left?
I was like, still in Katsina. I wasn't serving any organization.
This was under Abacha, right? After the
Yes.
Yes.
So what happened? Look, what I can remember now. What happened was I was here. The secretary to the government of Katsina State was asked to come and invite me to come into Katsina State government. My first reaction was, look, I handle Kaduna, why Katsina? Then I said, no, it's wrong. It was wrong, but if you are invited in public affairs, probably the chances are you will probably do some good and it will be beneficial to the people. So I accepted. And I was not comfortable because I said,
That he accepted to be an officer in Kaduna State,
in Katsina State,
as commissioner.
as commissioner, because I was invited. I wanted to rebel, but this is pride. I said, no, I will go in. So I was appointed commissioner of finance, Katsina State. I don't, what happened was my boss was so much in hurry. He looked at me and said, well, because he realized that I worked for Usman Jibrin military, I worked for Muhtar military, I also worked for Alpha military. So probably I had good understanding with the military. So he looked at him and said he wanted to make money. Wallahi, wallahi. Neither Usman Jibrin, no Muhtar Mohammed, no Alpha ever asked me or sent somebody for anything the way this governor was asking me to do. I said, look, at home in Katsina, for somebody to ask me that question.
Which governor was this?
Actually, isn't it? You see, so he saw my face that what he uttered was unbecoming. It's not forthcoming with me. So he ignored me. He went round, he got a small net somewhere in Ministry of Agriculture. His name was Ado bin Ali, Ado Ali. And they spent 73 million. So right. Kabir Masari, probably brother to President Governor here. He would then be accountant, deputy accountant general. He collected all the information, the copies. He came because he respected me very much. He said, sir, this is for information. I was shaken. So I said, look, I rushed to the government house. I went and saw my administrator. He said, Honorable Commissioner, I said, Your Excellency. I sat down. Believe me, I said, Your Excellency, that position of yours is that of excellence. That's why we call you Your Excellency. You don't spend public money the way you did. He said, look, he was under pressure, fertilizer, blah, blah. I said, not to that extent. So sometimes I say, could there be any commissioner of finance who could not last 1 year and are whisked out into Ministry of Agriculture? Since between my appointment and my discharge from Ministry of Finance was not 1 year, under 1 year.
So you are moved to Ministry of Agriculture?
Agriculture, yes. There was an episode which also was really not in public interest. I said, no. Hi, they all gathered, I think a lot of them gathered together. I said, look, if you allow this gentleman to be with us, we'll be in trouble. So a decision by the Katsina government was taken that I should be removed. I should be removed immediately. But before that, they tried to sound the views of the highly influential people in Katsina. And they said, look, that guy was not part of us. Get rid of him. Tukurji Kamshi heard the story in the town that Gidado was going to be removed. So he rang me, landline then. When he rang me, he said he wanted to discuss. I said, what is it? He said, no, it's not for the telephone. So he came to my house here. We sat there. He said, have you any idea that you are going to be removed?
Even before you heard it yourself?
Wallahi. Have you let you know? I don't know. I have not heard about it, but there was a decision that you should be kicked out. And very influential people in the state were consulted, and they said, you are not part of them. The governor should get rid of him. God so kind, before they could announce it, it was announced that I was a minister.
Of finance too.
And they moved again to finance. My boss was the first to come in the morning in the full uniform.
The governor. To salute. So let's, a lot of people have heard about the Abacha years.
Yes.
You are the Minister of Finance.
Yes.
A lot of talk about how money
Yes.
taken away. What do you say about it? What happened?
Well,
How come there is all sorts of money belonging to Abacha in all sorts of places, which is not
wallahi,
apparently properly?
with regard to that, I swear with Quran that we have never discussed this with either Abacha or anybody, or the Chief Ani, wallahi, wallahi.
Chief Ani was your senior.
Yes, she was the minister. We had never discussed that one. But I learned Abacha wanted to dribble the powers that be because he was not in their good books. So he decided somehow, this is my hand information, to store whatever money he could muster elsewhere, not really to belong to him. Because I learned from my uncle. What happened was, one day Clinton telephoned Abacha. He said, no, I'm not going to talk to him. He said he will.
Who is your uncle?
Justice Bello. It is, no, I will not talk to him. So we can understand the bitter and sour relationship.
In the West and Abacha.
Exactly, in the Abacha. So what?
Much of the money was being kept in the West.
Well, I believe me.
You
Wallahi, it's surprising. I really, wallahi, billahi, I was never in the know of that so-called Abacha. What would they say Abacha? Look, no, to me, I don't know. I was not involved. What I know very well is when I got this information that he was not well with the West, that probably may be the prompting case for Abacha to do whatever he wanted. I thought he was putting in a pot somewhere in his house.
But what was your experience like as a minister under Abacha in those days? The normal day-to-day work you are doing?
Well, part of my responsibility was the finances of state, or the whole federation account. So I was distributing, or it was distributed by central bank and others, so that we share it, the three tiers of government, federal, state, and local council, according to laid down formula for distribution. So that much was my routine job.
Domestic finance?
Domestic, exactly. So any other thing, I know on any occasion when somebody very close to power, close to authority, either when I had there with Chief Anu, I said, no, I will not go to his office. I refused to go. Man is worth, but I don't want to get to know what is happening. Because what would possibly happen is, like I have decided when I was appointed minister, in addition to whatever was the code of conduct given nationally, I also drew up my own code of conduct in respect of my position as a minister. One, there are cases which I will sign ESTA code for duties, medical attention, defense, whatever. When I try to append myself, any other thing, I say no, banning. There was a clear cut case of somebody wanted to spend, a military man, to spend $100 and something million
dollars.
Somebody in government or private?
In government. So I understand. Abacha wanted me to also to have some flesh, so to. He called me, he said, Honorable Minister, I said, look,
Mr. X would like to spend this amount. So on his memo, he wrote Minister of State of Finance.
you should handle it.
I should handle it. So one of the guys rang me and said, guy has been here. I said, yes. He said, I will come to your house 9 o'clock. So he came to my house. And I refused to open the discussion on that man. We chat like we are chatting. And finally he discovered that I was not in the mood to talk about it. But I still wanted to comfort him. When I was escorting him out of my house, I said, sorry, Mr. X, don't worry, we'll treat your man. And I left. I refused. So my permanent secretary, Sada from Zamfara State, he called me. Sorry, he came to me, he said, sir, why do you sign to say? And I said, no, I will not. I told him, like I have said now, I have my own code of conduct. I will not do this. He said, but sir, Commander IG directed that. I said, doesn't matter.
So I want to sort of go into now, what is it like in private life? You have retired, you are 81. Do you miss anything about the being in government, being in private sector, now that you are in your quiet corner in Katsina?
Well, guys like this, one or two of them, they keep me thrilled, like they pose questions here and there, and that stimulates me to. Otherwise, I'm comfortable. I'm not popping into any office. Actually.
Financially, you are comfortable. You have made a very wise investment from an early age.
And by some divine arrangement, God has blessed. That could go in detail. Like all those properties in Johnson, I sold them and built up my business capacity.
What do you do? Do you do any farming? What do you do any economic activity to keep going now?
No, my children are starting now. But before, what I did, like I have said, assets. My assets kept me alive. I remember when we were signed off for the first time as ministers, because there was a time Abacha sent us away. And he sent somebody, or his son, or whatever, to give me a zip. I thought it was a fair when 200,000 naira. I was even in the hotel trying to check out. So that gave me right to have a property, which I bought 2 plots. Yes, from my trips, Estacole, because we did campaign for ADB presidency. We were running up and down all the country that Nigeria should be elected as the chief executive of ADB. So I bought 2 plots from some military chaps, 3,000 naira.
In Abuja?
In Abuja. So with the gift of this 200,000, I built one with, of course, some of my assets here and there, but I built in Abuja. The third one was, I built it, you know, when NUV were here at one time, what they did was, they built Nasser House. So they left the other branch vacant. So Modibo was the owner of the asset. So he sold it to me 750,000. And I was so happy that all the benefits that I have, then I was able to give them. So when people come, part of what I'm experiencing, come for something, they take money from your labor pay, they come and that sort of thing. So I said, look, the little money I have, I bought it. What I have in my pocket is from the south.
So how is your typical day like? When you, if you look at, let's say today, when you wake up, how do you spend your day?
Well, you see, I'm very happy that's why I was so happy that you are commissioning
Trust TV.
Trust TV. I don't even watch games. I don't watch MTV. Any except Sunnah TV, Peace TV. Now you are on TV.
Inshallah.
Any other? No. Then I read my Quran.
Do you exercise? Do you move around?
When I feel my body was sick, so from here to there, sometimes I walk 20 times, 30 times. Otherwise, no, nothing. But
we look good for 81. I mean, do you observe any dietary habits that you...
Yes, that one I will never, I always choose my meal. I try to eat as much as possible some of the natural foods. Because I'm 83, no, 84, because Islamically you I'm 84.
Yeah. And you still have two wives, one in Katsina, one in Kaduna, and
exactly.
you move in between?
That also is part of the thrilling game. After getting tired of all sorts of beggars, I moved to Kaduna for 10, 15 days. And then when I get to recharge, I come back home.
How do you feel about this situation in Nigeria? You have lived your life through so many different situations. How do you feel now? Are you worried about what we are going through?
Very much worried.
Why?
Worried in the sense, not per se for me, but the situation we found this country. Look, I had a bit of colonial administration. All our upbringing were really the British. Even the guy who was teaching us PT was an expatriate. So then 53 they handed over to our fathers, Sadona and Isaac, and they did nobly well in the sense that 1953 we had only one full-fledged public school, that is Balewa. 49 cabinet was initiated, 49. And 53, these gentlemen were given the responsibility of managing our lives. So they said every province must have a secondary school. So it was even forced in Kaduna because we had the privilege, the Minister of Education was from Kaduna and Saket. So the provincial secondary school Kaduna was started. In the 54, the building was commissioned, and I was in Form 1 in 1954. But the whole north was also in Kaduna provincial secondary school before their own would be completed.
Yes.
So I had that privilege. And they have done marvelously well. I remember very well when they took over, when only 6 persons in federal civil service. Aminu Saleh, Ahmadu from Ilorin, Edwin Obu from Benue, Bukar Shaib, Aminu Saleh, 6 of them in federal civil service. Only 6. In railway, in airways, in nobody, even in the native authorities. You find people from elsewhere, many of them. Regional government over 60%. Federal government, we said only 6 were sent there. And these people, because they were divine guided, all these children from provincial secondary school, and this, and this.
So what is the problem now? Why are we in this situation?
Well,
I think a lot of things happen that you would expect this sort of thing. One, during the time of Savannah, the process was so good that they choose people trust and put them in trusted places.
But are you not in some of the committees, elders committees?
No, we have so many private. For example, when we were in Kaduna, we had Engida Malam Gumi, and we organized some of the Islamic schools in Kaduna. Those makaranta and umbas biya, we make up the difference between malama. Da aka jiha, most of us were Kaduna. So when we came here, we started again, and I am one of the chairman of the Yada Muslims. So that kept me busy also. And our mosque, I also chairman of the
Mosque committee?
Not committee, the Masjid Mosque. So these are some of the things that keep me busy also thinking.
I think on that note, I would like to thank you very much for seeing our team and engaging us very freely in this conversation. And viewers, I hope you enjoyed this interaction with Alhaji Abu Gidado, who, as you heard, has very diverse experiences in many areas of life over the years. Thank you for joining Reminiscences, and see you another time.